Today, we're going to dive into the idea of nostalgia, its impact on our lives, and why I'm only now coming to terms with the end of my childhood, as a 27-year-old. It's funny how long it takes to accept these things, but perhaps that's part of the journey. So sit back, relax, and let's take a walk down memory lane together. What got me thinking about this topic in the first place was last weekend, when I found myself helping move things out of my grandparents' house. They both passed away this year, and the family finally decided to sell their house, a place that had been in our lives for what felt like forever. You see, this house wasn't just a structure, it was a vessel of memories. We spent countless holidays there, celebrating Christmases, birthdays, and family get-togethers. As I sorted through old photos and childhood toys, I couldn't help but feel this intense wave of nostalgia wash over me. Each object I touched seemed to bring back vivid memories of simpler times, playing games, eating Christmas cookies with family, or just the warmth of those holiday gatherings. It was in that moment, standing in that old house, that I realized something. My childhood, or at least the era that symbolized it, had truly come to an end. It was almost like an official marker in my life, a rite of passage. The house was no longer ours, the grandparents who had once filled it with life were gone, and now, the only place that childhood existed was in my memories. Nostalgia has this strange way of taking us back to a time that seems so perfect, so ideal. Like any nostalgia addict, I found myself yearning for those simpler days. But why is it that we hold onto the past so tightly? What was it about childhood that seemed so great? Is it just an illusion we create, idolizing the so-called good old days, or was there truly something magical about being young? When we were kids, we often fantasized about growing up. We couldn't wait to be old enough to drive, to have the freedom to do what we wanted, whenever we wanted. But now, as adults, we see things differently. The freedom we longed for is often bogged down by responsibilities, bills to pay, jobs to do, people to take care of. It's almost ironic. We spent so much time dreaming of adulthood, only to find that it's not as glamorous as we thought. In many ways, it's harder than we ever imagined. This passage of time can be unsettling. I came across an interesting stat recently. By the time we hit 21, we've already lived through what feels like half of our lives, at least perceptually. The reason for this is that as we get older, time feels like it speeds up. We fall into routines, work, eat, sleep, repeat, and the days start to blur together. How often do you find yourself saying, "Where did the time go?" or "How is it already September?" The older we get, the faster time seems to fly, and that's a hard thing to wrap your mind around. This has been especially true for me. After graduating from school, life felt like it started moving at warp speed. Every year seems to blend into the next. I mean, we're already in 2024, and it feels like we just celebrated the new year. It's like the milestones that once marked time, like birthdays, holidays, or even the release of a new video game, no longer hold the same significance. Remember when you used to eagerly await the next Call of Duty release? Now, I barely even notice when a new one comes out, probably because, well, they've all become pretty similar. And then there's the mirror, reminding me that time is marching on. I see my first grey hair starting to sprout, and I can't help but think, wasn't I just 14 yesterday? I used to sit in my parents' basement recording Call of Duty commentaries for YouTube, and here I am at 27, still making commentaries, still in my parents' basement. It's a strange kind of full circle moment. Life, it seems, used to be so simple. Back then, all I needed to do was get on my bike, hang out with my buddies, and spend hours playing basketball or Mario Kart. The world felt like it was bursting with possibilities. There were no bills, no responsibilities, just fun. You were free to be creative, to explore, to dream. But now, as we've grown older, life feels a little more challenging, doesn't it? It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's different. We've become distracted, too. The busyness of life, the constant ping of notifications, the endless scroll on social media, it's all consuming. We're pulled in 100 different directions at once, always having to respond to something, manage something, fix something. It's exhausting, and it often leaves little room for creativity or spontaneity, two things that made childhood so wonderful. It's no wonder we find ourselves longing for the past when life didn't feel so heavy. But what really strikes me about nostalgia is how selective it can be. When we look back, we tend to focus on the positive moments. Our minds gloss over the bad days or the struggles we went through, leaving us with an idealized version of the past. For example, I often think back to summer vacations from school. They seemed endless, filled with bike rides and video games, with no real worries. But if I'm being honest, there were also moments of boredom, or times when I wanted to be older, to do more adult things. Memory has a funny way of editing out those less glamorous parts of the past. This selective nostalgia makes it easy to romanticize childhood. We tend to forget that it wasn't perfect. We might not have had responsibilities, but we also lacked independence. We were dependent on our parents for everything, from food to transportation to decisions about our lives. We wanted freedom, but didn't understand what came with it. Adulthood may come with bills, but it also brings the ability to make our own choices. And that, in itself, is something worth appreciating. I've come to realize that while nostalgia can be comforting, it can also trap us. If we spend too much time longing for the past, we risk missing out on the present. I've noticed this in myself, how easy it is to get lost in old memories or to play old games just to capture that feeling of being young again. But the truth is, we can't go back. The past is over, and all we have is right now. That doesn't mean we shouldn't reflect on or appreciate our pasts, but we need to balance that with embracing what's in front of us. This all ties into the phase of life I find myself in right now. On one hand, I'm on the brink of moving out of my parents' house, which is a huge milestone. I'm excited for what's to come, the independence, the new challenges. But on the other hand, part of me still feels like a kid. I'm still living with my childhood pets, surrounded by the same familiar environment, and I often find myself being pulled between two worlds, my past and my future. It's a weird in-between stage, but I think it's something a lot of us go through. Nostalgia is a powerful thing. In many ways, it's like a drug. It's fun to indulge in memories, to play the old games, to watch the old shows. But too much of it can be unhealthy. If we spend too much time looking back, we might miss the present. I've found a way to strike a balance, though, and a big part of that is through YouTube. Creating content has reawakened something in me, a fire that I thought had gone out. It's allowed me to stay connected to my past, but in a way that pushes me forward rather than holding me back. It's given me a purpose, and for that, I'm grateful. I've also come to realize that time is fleeting. It's easy to waste it, to let it slip by as we scroll through Instagram or binge watch Netflix. But life is too special to spend it on things that don't matter. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that we need to break free from the routines that trap us. We need to make the most of the time we have. Go on adventures. Make plans with friends. Cherish the people around you. And most importantly, live each day with intention. At the end of the day, we can't stop the passage of time. But we can control how we spend it and who we spend it with. I've accepted that my childhood is over, and while that's a bittersweet realization, it also marks the beginning of something new. I'm excited for what the future holds, and I hope you are too. Thanks for listening, and here's to making the most of the time we have.